Resurrection, Ancient Prophecies, and Globe-Spanning Adventures. This is an outrageous true story of Patrick McCullum, an eccentric spiritual leader who's been identified by indigenous elders as the man who foretold to fulfill a sacred prophecy to save the Amazon. Our guest today, Gabe Polsky, went out on a mission to figure out if Patrick is the real deal, and this is an amazing documentary film. The film is called The Man Who Saves the World. We're joined today by Gabe Polsky. Gabe, welcome back to the program.
Great to do this again.
Yeah, thank you. You were on for Red Army, terrific documentary film about the Detroit Red Wings and their recruiting, if you will, of Russian Iron Curtain players was really wonderful. It was a great documentary. Tell me a little bit about how you got to meet Patrick McCollum, because this is just beyond amazing. This whole enterprise, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So I got a kind of I was editing another film called Butcher's Crossing. It's a narrative kind of about buffalo hunters. And anyways, I was about done with that, and I got a call out of the blue from a respected producing colleague who I knew, and he called me out of the blue and he said, Gabe, this is really weird, but I thought of you. I heard this story. It's very, very strange, but for whatever reason, I thought of you, and would you be open to hearing it out? I can connect you with kind of this guy and people with him. And so I thought of, it's weird, but I kind of like these coincidental things. And I met with this guy, Patrick McCollum, who, is relatively unknown, eccentric, kind of spiritual leader who's lived many different lives and knows how to do just about anything. He's kind of like a Renaissance man, but incredibly quirky and kind of unique guy. And so I met him, and it turns out that he was approached by elders from the Amazon from various tribes in India at a peace kind of gathering, who came to him and said, we think you're this guy and this prophecy we've had for thousands of years, who's going to come when the world's in a very difficult place, and he's going to come and help unite the tribes of the Amazon and kind of restore the Amazon and essentially save the earth. And so this guy, Patrick McCollum, at first didn't really believe it and didn't really have time or know what to do with this information. And ultimately, after several years, kind of decided, you know what? I'm just going to kind of do this and see what happens and try and fulfill this prophecy. And so, kind of, I thought it was crazy. I thought this guy might be, either delusional or whatever. And obviously, I didn't like dive in right away, but I started to do a little bit of research and ultimately meet with these indigenous people over Zoom and kind of confirm, do you really think this guy Patrick McCollum? And they said yes, yes, and various tribes, and so they invited me to come down and shoot and see what happened. I thought, well, what's the worst that could happen? And I learned something new. I go to a place and really learn something here, whether it's complete farce or true or not, I'll learn something interesting, from people that I have no experience with. So I did it, and things started to kind of happen and unfold and weird things, and I was learning a lot, and I was confused and frustrated and thought this was crazy. Why am I doing this? And ultimately, I kind of went into this rabbit hole of a story, and that's kind of how it happened.
Well, I will tell you that what all the things that you just described and all the rationale and reasoning that you were going through were great to watch in the movie, because I think it gives us as a viewer an opportunity to feel more and more comfortable with what Patrick is about, what he says he's about. And I have to tell you that seeing Jane Goodall kind of vouch for him was, for me, the moment in the film where I went, okay, well, I mean, I have some expectation that you wouldn't be chasing down a rabbit hole here, but at the same time, what should I start believing here? And you see Jane Goodall, and you think to yourself, okay, this is pretty incredible. And then from there, I really think that from that point forward, at least for me, you're open to whatever else is going to be said or happen in this film.
Yeah, I mean that's very true. It's incredibly hard to believe, and I was actually same as the audience, like he said he was, best friends with Jane Goodall and she supports his mission and obviously I didn't really believe it right away that in the film you see I hire a private investigator to check him out. Then I asked him to put me in touch with Jane and after a while we finally, got to her. She even agreed to interview. I said, look, in my mind, this film could not really work without that vouching, the Jane Goodall element, just because it's so crazy that at that exact time in the movie, you sort of need something like that. Because otherwise you're just like, why am I watching this? This guy's just a crazy guy. Because the story is so incredible and so hard to believe. And then I said, look, this film is almost going to hinge on Jane Goodall because, to get you through, to allow you to believe enough to go on the journey. And so we got her and she, thinks he's the most extraordinary person she's ever met and, really, really believes in him and what he's trying to do. I mean, she does. Well, one thing about Jane, which is fascinating, is I wish I could show the whole interview, but obviously the for film, I just needed to take what was necessary. But herself is kind of very open-minded to I don't want to say paranormal, but things beyond the what we see in reality, and sort of psychic phenomenon and things that, coincidental things or things that are, transcendent. And so I found that pretty interesting. She's not just hardcore scientific. She believes in that there are other things out there that are influencing things, that we can't see or perceive or really in this reality. It's beyond what we can perceive.
And I have to say that up to that point in the movie, Patrick was kind of checking off all the boxes for the other way that this could be going. He's seen space aliens, or he's encountered some, extraterrestrial kinds of things in his life. So you're right. That moment for me, and I think a lot of people as well, will be, okay, I'm in. And it just gets more and more and more fantastical and believable at the same time as you progress through this film. It just reinforces all the things that he's been saying.
That's kind of one of the reoccurring themes in the film is that stories we all kind of believe in different stories, but they're all stories, and you have to sort of choose what to believe in and not. And one thing that I kind of, as I got further into this journey and part of my life is, there's just a lot more happening than we can actually see or perceive. There's a lot to learn, from the indigenous way of life and wisdom, but also, some people spend their lifetimes really, trying to connect to what's out there, trees, whatever it be, and develop their ability to connect and perceive and their understanding of the world and the reality we live in. So, it sort of opened me up a little bit to different ways of thinking.
Yeah, and I think people who watch this, I hope they're open to what you just described, is opening themselves up to another way. We haven't figured everything out. There are things that will be unknowable until all of us are gone. But at the same time, we're finding things, and science is in some ways reinforcing this notion. The idea of black holes, right? It could be a portal to another whole, universe or whatever, another world, are things that the science is embracing at this point. So,
Yeah.
so now let's take a step back because the big picture here is and the concerns that are of Patrick and the indigenous peoples of the world is the fate of the planet, and specifically the fate of the Amazon basin. It's not the only thing they're concerned about, but certainly it's a key part of what is happening in the world and why there is so much concern about the fate of the Amazon basin. Let's talk a little bit about that and why.
Yeah, I mean, I think, most people know that maybe they do, maybe they don't, that the Amazon is kind of at a critical point and it's being destroyed. About a third of it has been destroyed already, and there's, a lot of activity with logging and oil extraction and primarily also agriculture and cattle. And so, scientists believe that, it's at sort of a tipping point right now, and that if it continues to be destroyed, that it'll potentially completely kind of change the whole Amazon and sort of what it is, and into kind of a grassy savanna instead of a rainforest. And so that could change the entire climate of the earth and really cause a lot of catastrophe.
So there's that, and I don't want to give a whole lot more away about the story because I think this is really part of the fun of watching, part of the kind of enjoyment of watching the film is in getting to know these people, getting to know the indigenous peoples and the leadership and how they interact and the consequential nature of this story without giving too much away is pretty profound in a way that in an unexpected way, the coming together and I don't even know if I said too much there, but
Yeah,
it's
I mean, I
really
think what makes this story different from others kind of in this space. I never set out here to make like an environmentally focused film, although it is about the fate of the planet, the Amazon, and all that. I love the environment, and I guess I consider myself an environmentalist, but I'm not trying to make environmental films necessarily. I have to make a film that's like highly entertaining and super interesting and putting something new into the world, make people think about things in a different way, put a character, focus on a character that's incredibly, fascinating, that has something to give, that is engaging. And it's a character study, but it's also has these really, global ramifications, and it deals with prophecy, and it deals with indigenous wisdom, and magic and talking to trees. And I mean, these are it's just themes that I really, really thought are really interesting and original. You just don't see stories like this. It was very scary to do a film like this because, well, I like doing films that are different, but at the same time, this was very unknown. And, given the marketplace right now, it's just everyone's doing the same repetitive stuff. It's just a challenge to make a film like this. It's both psychologically because I didn't know where it was going and it was super weird, but also kind of from a business standpoint, looking at what people are interested in buying and things like that. So
and you are our guide in the film. You are there to ask the questions that most people will be asking themselves as we move
yeah.
forward in the story. And I thought I'll call it your bearing, I'll call it your journey, I'll call it your skepticism. All of these things play well into the telling of this story. And you're absolutely right. Our whole world, our whole existence is based on stories, on what we believe, what we choose to believe, and what we think we know to be true. And that's fundamental to the human experience, and it all plays out in this film in such a I'll call it magical. Do you mind if I call it magical way in the
No, I
way?
mean that's a great way to put it. I don't know how people, how people, you say a word and they have a million different associations with it. Magical. But yeah, it is. It is magical.
Well, and again, I think magic is for people as we were evolving into to the human beings that we are today. They didn't have a lot of scientific explanations. So to say something that happened like this, to call it magical is okay until we know more. Let's call it, something that we can explain. But for the betterment of all of us, it's a magical, and this is. This is really you tell somebody the premise of this film, you're going to get, a lot of people looking around the room. And then at the same, but I'm just going to say, I mean, because it is, you just can't, it's hard to believe until you see it unfold in your film.
Yeah, yeah. And I like too that we've got some big heavy hitters in the comedy space like Danny McBride, Peter Farrelly, Jody Hill, David Gordon Green, they're all EPs on this and supportive. And the reason I wanted them to be involved in that way is just, to signal to the audience that well, this is a serious movie to me, but it's very funny and it's, very entertaining. And like I said, a great character study. It just makes you chuckle the whole way. We just had a big preview screening in San Rafael and everyone was laughing the whole time. I mean, but at the same time, it's meaningful and there are times where it's emotional as well. And so I'm sort of, I always it helped pull me through this journey as a filmmaker because I always said, I know I can make people enjoy this journey. It's not just like always so serious and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is funny, but at the same time,
But that's funny about life too, where there's a lot of awkward stuff and confusing things and
yeah.
frustrating. You could feel it as the journey goes.
And in terms of our watching Patrick McCollum as we're getting to know him, to see that he's willing to, go along with it. He's willing to say, I get that, people are not going to believe me or whatever. And then at some point in the film, you really see him as he becomes more vulnerable for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
You're really pulling for, I want this guy to succeed. I want him to be the guy that I think he is at some point in this film, and I want him to win, if you will.
Yeah, I
What do
was
you-
so the same screening, he mentioned, one of the things that kind of inspires him is that, to know that, at his age, he's like 75, that he's not done yet, and there's still a lot to do and you can do it. And he did a lot. Hell,
yeah.
he did a lot more than I do for the environment. And he doesn't have any money, nothing, spending his life trying to do things that are good for people. You could criticize and sort of wonder, well, what is this guy's motive? He's just trying to do a good thing, He might be a little bit crazy, but anyone who's trying to do something important, people are going to think they're crazy.
And I want to acknowledge his wife. She's obviously a huge part of his ability to be able to do what he does, and patient as hell with him.
Yeah.
Is it Barbara? I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
think
Barbara, yeah. And
Barbara.
she herself is like really successful professor and she, I wasn't able to put everything in the film, but yeah, but she just got this huge Templeton grant. I mean, yeah, she's pretty impressive too.
I am urging anyone listening to the sound of this, our voices here in this conversation, The Man Who Saves the World, question mark, is the wonderful film by Gabe Polsky, and I cannot recommend this film strongly enough. And I have to admit, it came out of left field, and I'm going to run around with a banner wherever I go, urging people to see The Man Who Saves the World. Gabe, thank you so very much for this film. Thank you for coming back after, yeah, for your
You seem
work.
like
And
that. That's what I love is the fact that it is coming out of left field, because that is I think it's better when no one knows and all of a sudden this film comes out and you're like, what the hell is that? You know?
well, just the title. I mean, and
Yeah,
and and
exactly.
and the way it's presented, the poster, you're just not sure what is. It's all a kind of a sense of uncertainty. It's great. It's great. It's a great approach. You mentioned, the executive producers. I also want to acknowledge Area 23A, which also has done doc is responsible for its production company, right? Is that who's the
Yeah,
producer?
they distribute. They're a
Distributor.
distributor.
Okay. Common Ground, which is a terrific documentary film. And speaking of the world we don't understand, Fantastic Fungi,
Yeah,
which is a
yeah.
wonderful documentary about trees and the undirt, if you will,
Mushrooms.
mushrooms
Mushrooms.
and everything else communicating with one another in this
Yeah.
way that we've never understood before. And just so much here. The film opens in Los Angeles on October 17th and in New York on the 24th of October. National release after that. Special events. All kinds of stuff I hope, will be going on. And I pray to God that Patrick McCollum is healthy and continuing his own journey because we need about a billion more Patrick McCollums in the world. So we can help
That's
you can work
true.
on that too. Okay.
That's so true. Thank you, Mike. It was a pleasure. Thanks for your support,
Yeah,
and
you're welcome.
I'll see you around.
Are you going to be in LA for any of the screenings here?
Yeah, for the LA screening, for the first two screenings, but yeah, on the 17th and 18th.
Theater.
Lovely at Monica.
All right, Gabe, thank you so much. Thanks for coming back on and all the very, very best to you, man.
Thank you. You too.